Figure it out.
Hello, this is Adam Koralik with Figure It Out Productions. The following video is part of our Quick Shoot series.
Hey guys, it's Adam here, and today I got a package I'm going to be opening up for you. This comes from StoneAgeGamer.com. Now, if you're into retro gaming, you probably already know them pretty well. If not, you should check out their website. They're pretty cool. Now, full disclosure, they sent this to me absolutely for free for the purposes of review, so I just want to make sure that's out there. Now, let's go ahead and open it up, ripping the box instead of cutting it, because that's how MVPs go. I don't know. But inside, we have a couple of items. We have a little card that is, hang on, I think it's, I don't know what this is. It's the cutest little envelope. I've never seen an envelope this tiny before. Oh, it's magnets. Okay, that's cool. It's magnets for Stone Age Gamer and a business card. Yeah, a couple of business cards and a magnet, which is pretty nice. And of course, the device itself, the thing we're here to discuss. Let me put the box off to the side. Now, this box is called the Engine Block AV Turbobooster. Now, that name is not the best name. It doesn't exactly roll off the tongue, does it? But yeah, no, that's okay. The point of this device, the reason it's called Engine Block, when you break it down, is actually not a bad name. It's for the PC Engine. It is literally a block. It's for AV, it's for audio-video purposes, and the Turbo Booster is just to remind you of what its function is, because there was already a device called the Turbo Booster, so there you go. But we'll talk more about that in a bit. But if you're like, okay, Adam, whatever, what's the point of this? Why am I watching this? Well, the point of this device is you connect it to the back of your TurboGrafx 16, your PC Engine, or if you have a SuperGrafx, which is a console I do not own, you connect it to the back of those particular consoles, and it will allow you to get better video quality for them than they originally had. So it just kind of attaches just like that. How cool is that? Now, in order to understand what I'm saying specifically, you kind of have to understand that these consoles, as great as they were, when NEC released them, they made it so that it could support multiple different types of outputs. It supports RF, it supports composite, it supports S-video, and it supports RGB. Basically what that means is it had a wide range of different cables it could support, each one varying in its picture clarity. You know, RF being the worst and RGB SCART being the best. But however, when they built them, they only put RF ports on them. So you couldn't actually use the other ones, which is kind of unforgivable. Even by the time they released it, it should have at least had composite on board, but it didn't. NEC did eventually attempt to correct that problem by giving us the Turbo Booster. It's an officially licensed product that is essentially the exact same concept, and it's also why they put Turbo Booster as part of the name of this thing. It's the same idea. You just plug it in, but it only had composite output. Now that's not great, but it's certainly better than RF was. And for years, that was really the only option you had if you had one of the consoles. Now I actually don't even own one of those Turbo Boosters. I always kind of wanted one, but I never got around to it, and I'm glad I didn't, because things like this exist now. Over time, as we've gotten more into the high definition era, and as demand on TurboGrafx stuff has gone up and all that, people, especially in the modding scene, have looked at it and been like, hey, did you guys know it supports better video quality? We just haven't been using it. So that's why you're seeing boxes like this. Now again, if this sounds familiar to you, I did a video on one of these already. Very similar concept right here, well, same concept but slightly different. This is made by a buddy of mine named Jody who lives up in Canada. Same idea, man. You just plug this in and it gives you different video outputs. Because all those video outputs are built in. Like, this box isn't doing anything other than tapping into what's already in the machine. It's essentially like just creating new ports and getting direct access to it. So yeah, but in this case, this box supported two options. It gave you composite and it did component. Again, I did a video on this one already, but the component is kind of troublesome, and that's why I'm actually really happy about this one, because this one supports RGB natively. Now, in case you're curious, like, hey, you know, why wouldn't the component one necessarily be better? I'm curious what the deal with that is. Well, actually, before I go into that, if you're like totally confused as to what all these cables are and what we're talking about, around here is where I usually would explain the difference between all those cables, but I've done that so many times, I don't want to bog the whole video down with that. So here's what I'm going to say. Go watch my FrameMeister video or my OSSC video. Those videos will explain in very great detail what I'm talking about with all these different cables. Those videos are about boxes that will, in short, take your old consoles, you connect them to the box, connect the box to your TV, and it looks much better. It's obviously more detailed than that, but go watch that. Okay, welcome back. All right, now, so assuming you understand the difference between all these cables and stuff, What you need to understand about these two devices when compared to each other, or any device that would use Component or any device that would use RGB, is that the TurboGrafx 16 only supports 240p. That's the resolution it runs at. And depending on what type of cable you connect, the resolution doesn't change, but the image clarity does. Image clarity, resolution, graphics. Three different things. People always wind them together as if they're the same. They're not, but they're different. So what you have to understand is the console will only output 240p. This device doesn't change the resolution. Now, in this device's case, if you're connecting it through Composite, and let's just say you took the Composite cable, plugged it straight into your HD TV, which is not recommended, your HD TV goes, okay, I don't know what that resolution is, I just know it's an old thing, so I'm going to just make it display, I'm going to upscale it to 480i, and I'll show something on the screen, which is why it tends to look really bad. But Component, which is a smarter format, ironically will not be able to display it in most cases because most TVs or monitors that support Component do not support 240p, which was always the Achilles heel of this particular device. I had one TV that could support it, nothing else. So if I wanted to use it through my primary TV, I had to connect it to a device like the FrameMeister. And the FrameMeister's Achilles heel is the fact that its component input has never been that great. It's much better at handling RGB. This device is awesome if you have like a CRT that supports component input, or if you happen to have a television that supports component input and you want component. If you do not, it may be worth considering this, because this offers you a multitude of options. One is Composite, as mentioned before. You could do that if that's the easy route. But they also give you the added benefit of S-Video, so if you're, again, the kind of person who's like, I don't have a FrameMeister, I don't have an OSSC, I don't have a SCART to HDMI, I have none of that stuff. I just want to take my TurboGrafx and plug it into my TV and have it look better than RF. That's all I want. Then you at least have S-Video, which gives you a slight improvement. Oh, over RF, it'll be a big improvement. It's still not the route I would recommend, but it is definitely an improvement. But so if you take a look at the device, like I said, Composite, S-Video, and then finally RGB. Now this is the one I really care about. Because that, if you do it correctly, you will get beautiful image clarity out of the TurboGrafx 16. It really is impressive based on this one. And I'm sure this will be just as amazing, and I'll definitely find out for sure and let you know if there's any other flaws or anything like that that I see with this. But it's worth noting that when it comes to the cables themselves, obviously Composite and S-Video ports, very, very standard. If you're in North America, these are easy to find. Any sort of cable will do. They're universal. The RGB one is the one that's more confusing because RGB SCART doesn't exist in North America. We never had it. So in order to use it here, you have to have a device like, again, the SCART to HDMI device, the FrameMeister, or the OSSC. You have to have that to use RGB in North America. You just do. Unless you've imported a SCART-compatible television, which kudos for that kind of dedication. But the port itself is not an RGB SCART standard port because it just doesn't have the space for it. They didn't put a SCART port on there. So instead, to kind of make it, I wouldn't say it's not unique, but it's also not universal, they put another type of port on there, which is the same exact port that the Sega Genesis Model 2 and the Sega 32X both use. The reason that's good is if you're into RGB and all that stuff and retro consoles, there's a decent chance you actually have this cable already. I do. If you don't, you can check out, there's an eBay seller named Retro Console Accessories. That's where I buy all my RGB SCART cables. And it's actually the same one that Stone Age Gamer even recommends. That woman makes her own cables and she does an amazing job. You can buy the Sega Genesis Model 2 ones and they will work with this device. It's also worth noting, I'll put a link in the description to the Stone Age Gamer's website specifically for this device so you can read all the technical information and all that stuff on there. And of course if you want to order one as well. But yeah, so if you have that cable, which I do, you would then connect it to your FrameMeister and you'd be up and running. Or any other type of device you have to connect it. At the end of this video, I'll compare all the different formats and show you all that fun stuff. But focusing more specifically on the device, at first glance, it's well built, and you can see here it has these two little ports here, which again, it's a little different than this other one. This other one has just like a big generic piece that connects in there, perhaps for added stability. This one doesn't have the middle piece. It just kind of uses the ports that it needs. And as long as you're not like constantly popping it in and out or putting a lot of stress on it, it probably would be totally fine. But I imagine if you have, for some reason, a more rocky setup, a less stable connection is potentially possible because it's just not as well secured in there. But it seems to have no problem going in and out. I have obviously thus far I had no issues with it, but again, we'll fire it up and find out. One thing that's very important to understand about this device is when you order it, it does not come with any of the cables as previously mentioned. The composite S-Video, you won't get an RGB cable, you won't get it. You'll have to get that on your own. But it doesn't require any additional power supply. It's powered by the console itself, which is very cool.
Before we get on with the gameplay footage, I want to note that they included this, and it basically just says there's a specific type of RGB cable you need. To avoid confusion, I'll include a link in the description to the exact cable that everyone needs to get. Also, because of the stability issue, it seems like, again, they were ahead of me. They included these little rubber feet. They give you 6 of them, and the idea is that you put 2 of them on the little box here, or I guess you could put 4 as I'm indicating, but they recommend 2 on this thing and then putting 4 on your console. Personally, I didn't end up doing that, but you could to make it more stable. Just a couple other little notes here. There's a lot of different versions of the PC Engine / TurboGrafx 16. According to the website, only the main TurboGrafx 16, PC Engine, and SuperGrafx are supported by this. Because I don't own any other versions of the console, I can't actually test this myself. I imagine the reason for this is that they require that expansion port. So I think like the Core Graphics had it, but I don't own one, again, so I can't test it. Whereas I'm pretty sure things like the Turbo Duo didn't have one, so that would make perfect sense. Because again, it uses the expansion port. If you have the PC Engine CD or the TurboGrafx CD, which use that same port, logically you can't connect this, so keep that in mind. The TurboGrafx CD is not compatible with this device. And finally, one thing about it that's really cool when you think about it is it doesn't require any sort of modification. Like, you don't have to do anything. Like, it's a stock, you know, you just plug it into a stock unit and it works, which personally I really like, because obviously that's a cheap solution that's vastly more universal. Anyway, let's get on with it. Let's play. To show the device in action, I'm going to be playing Bonk's Adventure, and I'll be showing different modes, and for the first time ever, check it out, capturing RF. Look how terrible that is. Yeah, so basically in the upper left corner, you'll see whatever format we're on at any given time. Now keep in mind, the only reason that I've captured anything from RF is because RF is what the console natively puts out. The other 3 are the options you'll get if you have the box. Without the box, the only thing you have is RF. Yeah. Have fun with that. That looks fucking great. No, it doesn't. But at the very least, you can do an upgrade here to Composite. As you can see, it's certainly a good improvement. S-Video is sharper, and is definitely an improvement, but obviously the way I would go here is with RGB. Now you have to keep in mind that a couple of factors. I have this thing running through a FrameMeister. I have all of these things running through a FrameMeister, so it is manipulating the footage to a certain extent. It's also going through a Hauppauge HD PVR2, and it's been edited and captured and uploaded to YouTube. Point is, it'll look different on your television, but this gives you a pretty good sense of where you're going with this. And obviously RGB is what I would highly recommend. But yeah, man, I really have no complaints about this thing. I plugged it in, it worked perfectly fine. It's a solid device all around, and I had no issues with it whatsoever. It's worth noting that Stone Age Gamer does not actually build these. They just kind of get the boards and then they assemble a case around them. I only found that out recently. So that's cool of them to do. Again, if you want to check it out, there's a link in the description where you can pick one up, but bear in mind, again, you have to buy all the cables and stuff like that. Thank you to Stone Age Gamer. Thank you guys for watching. I will see you all later.